Hello, literacy enthusiasts, and welcome to LitFilmFest Live, where we discuss a classroom topic and a brand new book to go alongside it. I'm Tim, and tonight we'll be exploring Sarah Todd Taylor's book, Max the Detective Cat, Disappearing Diva. What an interesting title, Sarah. Hello.
Hello.
We have a real cat detective in our midst, I presume.
We do. yes, cat detective.
Fantastic. I've just got your blurb, so I'll just read it out because it's a very interesting book, a nice mix of genres, animal fiction. Max, the chief mouse hunter at the Theatre Royal, is up to his whiskers in his first mystery. Max notices that the famous singer Madame Emerald is acting strangely. Why is her maid so terrified? And what kind of singer doesn't like to sing in public? Soon Max is trapped in a complicated web of crime, dashing around dancers' legs and over the rooftops of London in a race to catch a clever thief. Ooh, thrilling. What made you bring all of these themes together, Sarah, in your writing?
Well, I've always loved puzzles, and I've always loved mystery stories. I love the books of Agatha Christie, and I grew up on Secret Seven and Famous Five. But I've also spent a lot of time in the theatre. Since I was about 15, I've done lots of shows and I've also worked backstage. And it just seems like such a wonderful world to set a mystery in, because everybody's pretending to be something they're not. And of course, you've got all the kind of the tension between everything looking so glamorous from the front of the stage, but actually behind the scenes, it can also be a bit dusty and everything's not really real. So it seemed perfect for a mystery story. And I was going to write about a chorus girl who was going to be the detective. But then I decided that actually it would be quite good fun to have an animal, because I grew up with cats. I've always had cats around me.
I can see in the background.
Lots of cats. And it struck me that actually a cat can be places where a human can't be, so they can hide under tables and listen for clues, and they can leap about all the little tiny kind of areas of a theatre that humans can't go to, and they can squeeze into tiny places. So actually, I thought cat detective would be quite good. And theatres have cats, especially in the 1950s. Quite a lot would have cats to stop. You'd have a problem with mice chewing all those gorgeous costumes, or even the padding on the seats. So way back when museums and theatres would have cats. So I thought I shall have a theatre cat who's a detective.
Interesting. What an interesting bit of history there. I didn't know that. And also, thank you, Sarah, for just sending your comment in. She says, my class would love this. Very generous. And for that comment, Sarah, you have been entered into our competition to win a collection of Sarah's books. You've got them behind you, Sarah, haven't you? So you've got 3 books. Just leave a comment, a like, or share the video, and you are entered into our competition to win Sarah's books. So you've got, would you like to show your books? Just tell us a little bit about them.
There's the 3 Max books, and they are. The first one, he's investigating a mystery in the Theatre Royal itself. And then in the second one, they all go off to the country to a Halloween ball. So I've been reading this one again this weekend because of
nice.
And at a masked Halloween ball, they're investigating whether or not there is whether or not the portrait in the castle's hall is really coming to life and haunting, or whether something else is going on. And then the third one, they go off to Paris, and it's Max's first adventure where he goes abroad, and he goes to a singing competition, and all the cats in Paris are being catnapped. They're disappearing, and he has to rescue. I loved writing this one because it meant I got to have loads of cats. All the cats in Paris are being stolen, and he has to rescue them.
Fantastic. Well, the people in the comments are loving it. Thank you, everyone. Hello and welcome to you as well. Thanks for joining us. Again, if you leave a comment below, then you have a chance of winning Sarah's fantastic books. Sai says he loves all the cats in the background. He's really appreciating your deck. A little chat about that, didn't we? Just a little bit of an email about that.
Cats.
Laura says, love it when I hear about a book. I can think lots of other books to go alongside it. The Diamonds of Drury Lane is also set at the Theatre Royal.
I love that book.
Oh. Yeah. Good suggestion, thanks, Laura. And Joyce says, using animals definitely gives more scope for interesting storylines and different perspective, isn't it? Like you were talking about cats getting to places.
Yeah.
And finally, we've got a terrible pun, but I love it. These sound like a perfect set of books.
I love a pun. Love a pun.
Thanks,
that's why the third book is called The Catnap Caper, because I quite like puns.
Fantastic. And then Joy says again, didn't have you down as a cat person. Was that to me, Joy? Might be. Might be. I am more dog, but I do like cats. I am part dog.
I currently don't have cats. I have guinea pigs, which you might be able to hear in the background, being a bit noisy.
I don't mind. It's firewood night, isn't it? So yeah, please leave a like, please leave a comment, or share the video for a chance to win. UK only, UK and Ireland only, and competition ends next week at midnight. So moving on to your questions for this evening. Why is writing and reading about animals interesting for children?
Oh, why? Good question. Gosh. I think it's possibly because animals are honest. They just don't lie to us. And I think that's why they make such good characters, because as a child reading a book where an animal is the star, you know they're going to tell you the truth. There's something wonderfully honest about animals. And with cats, I find that they've all got their own little personality. They're all different, and they're really curious, and they're really athletic, and they can do stuff that we'd like to be able to do but can't, like jump across rooftops. And I think that's quite good fun as well. And the other thing I think with Max is that because he can talk, but humans, we're not the brightest. We can't speak cat, most of us. So he can tell. Yeah, well, I do try, but but he it means that when he's worked out the mystery, he has to find a way to tell the humans that isn't verbal, and because of that, I think that means I have to put lots more action in. And I made the decision at the very beginning when I was writing that he wasn't going to be a talking animal. He was just going to be all cat, and that forced me to make it very action packed. And I think children really like that. That he is that there's always lots of adventure driving the plot forward, and that Max is always showing things in that way. So that really helps as well.
I think that's quite an interesting choice, because a lot of older books would have probably had non-speaking cats. I think. Like the Enid Blyton series, Timmy the dog, etc. Whereas that seems to be a new phenomenon in fiction, is that speaking animals it's everywhere, isn't it? So interesting to make that decision as a writer, actually.
It did make it more difficult in some ways. I think it would have been easier for him to be able to just say, oh, it was her. But I think it did help me in the end, because, as I say, it makes sure that everything is always very visual. And that's really helped by Nicola Kinnear, who does the illustrations for Max. She's just captured all of that perfectly. So there's always lots of energy and action going on visually on the page as well.
Yeah, and that's a great tip actually for teachers. If you are getting your children to write animal stories, why don't you get them, some of the class, to think about whether they want their animals to talk, and some of them to be mute, but maybe more action-packed. So, or not mute, but talking their native animal language. But we'd like to hear what you think. Why you think children like to hear about animals in fiction as well. And everyone at home, that'd be interesting. So, why do you enjoy writing when contrasting worlds? The first chapter, which we'll look at later, has Maximillian, who has a very different lifestyle compared to the world he's thrown into. Why did you clearly enjoyed it? Why did you go down that route?
It's partly because he through the book he sort of learns that glamorous world that he used to live in isn't actually his home, and the theme of the first book, if it over everything, is actually not so much about the mystery, but about finding your home and finding where you truly belong. And he starts out in this beautiful, glamorous world that isn't really real, because there's no real love there's no real affection there, and he goes into this theatre world which on the face of it is fake. Everything's fake about it. And at the very beginning, when he gets into the theatre, he jumps on a settee and is shocked when it just falls to the ground. It looks fake, but it's actually the most real world he's ever been in, because everybody there truly loves him and they're his friends. So it was that kind of contrast between what is real and what is fake, and that I really wanted to draw out. And also this is just really, it's silly, and it's sort of glamorous on the top, and everything's larger than life.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have that core at the central core of it actually being the truest place he has ever found in the midst of what looks like fakery.
Great. Yeah, and what for you, audience as well, what kind of contrasting worlds do you think your children would benefit from looking at? Theatre is always a great one, isn't it? People love to take their classes to the theatre because it's very different to everyday life, so it can contrast nicely. But which worlds do you think your classes would benefit from? That's a question for everyone. We've got Joy coming back to us again. She says, on the previous question, perhaps it's more imaginative and allows children to engage better writing about an animal. Also, they grow up with animations, so perhaps very relatable too. Yeah, Tom and Jerry, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. And often we grow up with pets, so we wonder what their internal world is. What do they think? One of the things I sometimes ask children to do is what does your pet do when you're not around, or if you don't have a pet, what does what do the animals around you, in maybe the cows on the field opposite or something, what do they get up to when you're not around? And I think as children, when I was a child, I used to wonder what my teddy bears got up to. When I'm at school, what are they really doing? And I think there was that natural. What are they
rustling match?
Because we see what humans are always around us, and they sort of almost lose their charm. But there's something about animals and about our teddy bears that makes us think, what do they get up to when we're not watching?
That's a good story in itself, actually, isn't it? Yeah, very nutcracker, that.
Yeah.
And we've got Kenny. He says something pretty similar. He says a lot of children can relate to it, as they have lots of pets as they grow up, and it helps their imagination about the secret lives of pets and animals when people are not there. So yeah, that same theme there, isn't it? Got Simon Hunt. Hi, Simon. I feel children can relate to animals, and they love to write about animals too. Yeah, it's something that I think you said they're very trusting, aren't they, Sarah? They love each other. There's a sense of belonging and want. So yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. Thanks for that, Simon. And Sarah's got back to us as well. I think children and adults, I read MG books almost exclusively. They're far more fantastical, good word, and joyous than adult fiction, like animal characters, as it gives that extra sense of escapism. That's a nice point, isn't it? Escapism is so important.
Very much so. And they're just more fun.
Yeah. And Sarah, the ever good teacher, has added a few amendments to her comments. Well done. Well self-marked there, Sarah. Loving that. So how do you, Sarah, go about writing from a cat's perspective? What's the process for you as a writer?
I'm going to make a very silly confession. I sometimes do sit and there is a bit of how the cats move, and I spent an awful lot of time watching my mum's cats, which sometimes they would walk off looking a bit puzzled. One of the things I did was I sat on the floor a lot because I wanted to imagine what the world looks like from the height of a cat. And it does look very different. And when people are looming above you, you suddenly realize actually this perspective that you get and how you feel about how small you are compared to kind of these big creatures above you. So I did that a lot. I read an awful lot of cat behavior books to try and get inside the sort of mind of a cat, because I really, really wanted Max to be a cat, not just to be a human with 4 legs and a tail. So I read a lot of cat behavior books. I spent a lot more time with my mum's cats, which was great. Best research. And just tried to think about things like, well, if you can't just reach out and pick something up, the paws thing was a real issue. How Max could move things around. That involved sometimes putting mittens on to try and work out where they could move stuff. And also I made the decision that he couldn't read. And that changed some things. Clues that he might have been able to spot, he couldn't read. And then I decided that actually Oscar, his best friend, can read. So we wove a little bit of that in book 2. That Oscar's past is never explained. So there were things in Oscar's past that are never quite explained, such as why he only had one eye. So it's those sorts of things where you're just having to work out, well, make those decisions about, how human do I want my cat to be? Because he does solve mysteries, but I still want him to be as cattish as possible. And once I've made those decisions, what does that mean for how he moves, for how he relates to people and to other cats? That actually threw up one question: is when he goes to Paris, do French cats speak French cat, or can he communicate? And it's those sorts of questions. Does he speak? And I decided that cat is a universal language. All cats speak cats.
There's something nice then about writing your own fiction, that you create the rules for your own world, don't you? And you have to be bound by them. That's really important to the reader, isn't it? But you have to think through these things. And as part of a teacher, and teaching literacy and writing fiction, all the teachers watching, that can be something wonderful to explore. I can imagine PE lessons, moving like a cat, and then using that to actually bring that into your fiction. How would you walk along the balance beam like a cat on a tin roof? And you want it to feed into your literacy as well, don't you? So I
didn't climb any roofs.
Shame.
I didn't eat any mice. I drew the line.
Author climbed.
No mice eating.
Fantastic.
But it does change your perspective when you try to think of where your character is physically in relation to the other characters in your book.
We've got another very, very bad joke from Joy, another cat. So great for you. I wouldn't be able to write from a cat's perspective. My ideas would be very poor. I'm not sure. Not sure what's happening to the chat tonight, but everyone seems to think it's comedy night. Thanks, Joy. Great. Just to delve a bit under your expertise as a writer before we actually listen to an extract from your first chapter, how were you encouraged to write at school or not? Actually,
I had a fantastic teacher called Mrs. Tan when I was about 9, and I just owe so much to her. She was amazing. She was the first. I remember one of the first things she said to me about my writing was she liked the way that I chose words so that they would have an effect rather than just because they seemed like the right one to put in. And that stuck with me, and I took that as something to try and always do from then on, to try and choose words carefully. And that was a really important lesson. And she was very, very encouraging. She was also gave great advice. And we had, because I grew up in Wales, we have a thing called the Eisteddfod every year, where we have competitions at school for poetry and singing and for fiction, and also lots of music competitions, and the whole school would take part. And the Eisteddfod is a big thing, and there's also national Eisteddfods and everything.
You stand in a circle often and just like sway like. All chanting at the same time. I've seen it on S4C.
It's great. They're absolutely brilliant. And actually, the third Max book was partly inspired by the Eisteddfods, because I wanted a singing competition. I wanted to reflect that part of Welsh culture, but I ended up setting in France. But they're really important in Welsh schools. They're fantastic, and they put writing and music right at the heart of things. So we had Sports Day and we had the Eisteddfods, and it brought everything together, and it just celebrated everything that all children could do. So that really helped, because every year we'd have this celebration of writing, and that was just brilliant. I'm really grateful to the schools that I went to for doing that. And then I did a few courses. I'd actually choose courses that focused on the bits that I knew I wasn't very good at. So I used to struggle with structure, and I struggled with dialogue. So I went and did a screenwriting course, because screenwriting, you don't get to do any description. It's all about structure and it's all about dialogue. And I quite like description, and I have a tendency to go, yeah, I'm going to do lots of description, and it distracts me from the other bits. So I found that really useful. If I have something I know I'm bad at, I find a course that focuses entirely on that, and that really helps.
Pretty. Again, we've got more puns coming up. Sorry, we just have to mention it. Joy says, no need to be so catty, with a crying laughter emoji, which I'm not sure is warranted there, Joy. Not sure you can laugh at your own jokes that way. Followed by another one by Simon, a perfect joke.
Yeah, we're a whisker away from hilarity.
Please do not include these in your 4th instalment, Sarah. I'm not looking for those. Right, we are going to go into our quick fire fiction now, where I am going to test you on your own book. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to read your the first 3 pages of your chapter, if that's okay, after this intro. Okay, right. Okay. We are going to listen to your the first 3 pages, if that's okay, and I'll ask you a few questions about this, and we'll also be making this into a classroom resource for your children to comprehend, and a comprehension task, Sarah's lovely chapter, which we're going to actually have on our website for you to look at. Very useful for lockdown learning and home learning as well at the minute. As we know, it's our first day of lockdown, so we're very grateful to you, Sarah, and also Firefly Press.
It's Nosy Crow.
No, sorry, Nosy Crow, sorry. This is the Welsh link. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
The Welsh link.
Well, we're very used. We work with both, actually. Very thankful that Nosy Crow are allowing us to host this on our website for children to read and answer the questions about online. So, big thank you to them as well. So, Sarah, over to you. Looking forward to reading the first 3 chapters. We'll probably finish at until this morning, if that's okay.
Chapter 1. The Rooftops of London. Maximillian peered through the basket at the oily river and wrinkled his powdered nose. The smell of the city was harsh and sour, and everywhere seemed to be made of noise. He was not used to this. Maximillian was used to silver dishes, velvet cushions, and the very finest salmon soufflé. Maximillian was used to his beloved Countess Arlington fussing over him at least 6 times a day, and 8 times on Saturdays. Maximillian was not used to being stuffed into a smelly cat's basket and sent off with one of the maids late at night and without so much of a sniff at his supper. The maid in question, a rather clumsy girl with rosy cheeks, pressed her face to the basket. Maximillian fixed her with what he hoped was a regal stare and meowed his, "A terrible mistake has been made. Take me back home at once," meow. The girl made little shushing noises. "Don't worry, you silly scrap," she whispered. "I'm not really going to drown you, no matter what she says." Maximillian frowned. He did not know what drowning was, but the way the girl said it made him think it wasn't something nice, like salmon mousse or tummy tickles. He could not think why the silly child had brought him out on such a cold, damp night to sit by a smelly river. Countess Arlington would be worrying about him by now. Maximillian started to scratch at the basket, taking care not to snag any of his beautiful fur. The girl looked out over the river. "I don't know quite what I'm going to do with you, though," she said, "and I have to go back soon." Maximillian let out a low, rather ungentlemanly growl, and lay down with his chin on his paws. It was rude to growl, but the girl was being extremely silly. Everyone, in fact, had been rather silly today, ever since his little adventure with the soil and the mouse and the maid. Maximillian lived in Arlington Grove, the most fashionable townhouse in London. To be precise, Maximillian lived on a red velvet cushion in the drawing room of Arlington Grove, the most fashionable townhouse in London. His cushion was set into the window seat to catch the afternoon sun and was extremely comfortable, but he had never seen the rest of the house until this morning.
Fantastic. Oh, he's so spoilt. I love him.
He is.
Don't forget, if you like the video or leave a comment underneath, you stand a chance of winning a selection of Sarah Todd Taylor's books, which are fantastic. One last dad joke just before we start. Kenny, you can't stop, can you, Kenny? Said, I beat you to that dad joke. Yeah.
I love puns, just love them.
We could write a book of them after tonight. Fantastic. Great. Okay, question number 1. I'm going to grade you at the end of this.
No.
So, have you ever been in a situation which feels very different to how you live?
Oh, gosh. Ooh. Yes. Trying to think of one, but sometimes when I'm in sort of very posh places, I feel a little out of place. When you know that feeling when you sit down and you realise that there's more than one knife and fork on the table. You're thinking, I've no idea which one I use first. And the first time I went to a sort of formalish dinner and realised there was more than one knife and fork, and then no idea which glass I was meant to use, and that was very sat there looking at other people. What are they going to do?
You use your hands. You use your hands. Yeah. Then you can't use the wrong cutlery. No, that's a good one. Correct answer. How can everywhere seems to be made of noise from page 1? Why did you put that description? I like that description.
Yeah, well, it just struck me that when you step off a train in a big city, I live in the country, so you kind of go to the city and all of a sudden everything is just everywhere, coming from every direction, the traffic and the people. And I think for Max, of course, being a cat, the clattering of shoes on the pavement would have been quite deafening to him as well, because he's just used to one little room and maids pottering around on carpet, and all of a sudden he's on a city street where there's everything is so noisy, and traffic and feet and the sort of blaring from the theatres in the middle of theatre world. And I tried to kind of imagine what that must be like, and I think that's why he feels like it's just surrounding him.
That's what the world is, isn't it? Predominantly noise, I suppose. Yeah, that's a lovely point.
Which is why I think this year has been so strange, because the world has been so quiet. And it can feel very odd when you go into your town and all of a sudden the streets are quiet. It feels quite strange this year. Yeah,
people have listened to the bird. You heard that a lot, didn't you? People heard the bird for the first time, which was nice. Simon says delightfully, really enjoyed that. He's going to read. He wants you to read it to his class. We're going to put the full extract up, actually, Simon. We did a pre-recording, didn't we, where we read the whole chapter. So we will put that up for people to hear. Also, Lorna says, because most children have positive experiences with animals, often their pets are their best friends. That's really nice. A lovely point. Didn't we all dream about our pets going on adventures with us when we were kids? I think we did, didn't we?
They're great.
Elaine's loving the mystery. Yeah, that's nice. And thanks, Simon, for saying thank you there. That's so polite. What a polite group. Moved on for the jokes. Okay, on page 2, why does Maximillian frown?
I think it's because he's heard a word he doesn't know.
Yes.
And not knowing the dictionaries exist, he hadn't been able to look it up. But I'm very glad he doesn't know that word, because it's not a nice word, especially for.
Yeah, it's the word drowned. Drowned, isn't it? Drowning. Yeah. The maid insinuates that she doesn't want to drown him, no matter what she says. Insinuating someone wants to drown him. Yeah, it's clever. Good context. Good context there. Where did Maximillian live? And you are allowed to look this up if you want to. On page 3.
On page 3, he lived. Well, he supposedly lived in Arlington Grove, but actually he only lives on one cushion in one room in Arlington Grove. And Oscar is quite right. His Oscar, the first time he meets Oscar, who becomes his best friend, Oscar says his world is actually very small, and Maximillian never sees it that way. Maximillian thinks he lives a very spoiled life, but actually his life is really small and quite sad, really. He's just an ornament to Countess Arlington, and he adores her, and it's really sad.
Yeah, the paragraph starts interesting. This might have caught a few children out at home, actually, because it does start by saying Maximilian lived in Arlington Grove, and then later it says, to be precise, Maximilian lived on a red velvet cushion. So it might have caught you out if you didn't carry on reading then. Yeah, so good one. And what does the word scamper mean on page 4?
Scamper. Oh, that's one of the nicest things about writing about cats is that they don't just walk; they scamper, which is where they kind of bounce forward on their paws, and they do it when they're particularly excited or when they want to get places very, very fast. And it's very, very funny to watch because they kind of sort of their legs are almost moving too quickly for them to keep up, and they almost fall over their paws.
Lovely.
I thought Scamper's the name of the dog, isn't it? In Secret 7. I always thought it was a really good name for a dog.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, they do scamper as well, don't they? It's an animal thing. You don't see many humans scamper, do you? Unless they're up to something. Yeah, they're often scampering around, aren't they? What does the phrase, it was time to take matters into his own paws, mean on page 5?
It means Maximillian is about to become our hero. There's always this point in the book where in film writing they call it the inciting incident, where the hero decides that they are going to act and they are not going to just let the story happen to them. And for Max, I think it happens quite early on, where he decides he's not going to just sit in this basket; he's going to do something about it. And that's the moment when he actually starts to first act and decides he's going to escape and find his own way home because nobody's going to help him.
Interesting, and it's a take on the phrase "to take into your own hands," isn't it? As well? Yes, I like that. Nice.
I love a pun. I just love a pun.
Joy says, "You didn't see me in class today, scampering through." I have met Joy a few times, and she is of the size where she could scamper.
Scampering's good.
She's a bubbly short teacher, I think, and scamper's probably the word. Laura Boron says, it's always a good idea to read a child the first few pages of a book when you are helping them to choose one, and hearing you read this excerpt would convince them to pick up and read further. Thank you, Laura. That's very kind.
That's really kind. Yeah, thank you.
You have a theatre background as well, Sarah, don't you?
Yes, yes. I've done lots of shows. I wish I normally have when I do schools talks, I have photos of me in various silly costumes. But yes, one of my friends from school, my best friends from school, convinced me to join the theatre group when I was 15, and I did lots of musicals and Gilbert and Sullivan operas, and then I joined a small chamber opera group, and we go around the local area singing opera. So I love singing, so I try to put lots of singing, lots of music into the books, and I love theatre, and it's a real treat for me to be able to write about that world because I love it so much.
How is the city different from what Maximillian is used to?
It's kind of scary for him, but it's also wonderful for him because it's just so big, and it's noisy, and it's scary, and it's smelly, and it's all those things that perfect world that he's lived in aren't. And then he gets up onto the rooftops, and I wanted to get that feeling of it all falling away, and just the beauty of a city. When you get up high and you look over a city, it is just beautiful, all the lights and that sort of hush that you get. And then I wanted the music to cut through that, and that to be the moment where he starts to feel that actually he's maybe in the right place. So yeah, that whole, it's almost like going from one town to a whole world for Maximillian because of that sort of scale.
Fantastic. Tricky question. But simile.
Oh no! Oh no!
You can turn to page 15. That's allowed.
Oh no! It's a simile. Oh! Simile on page 15. Oh God, is it the carpet of lights?
It is. It is. Well done.
Oh, it's a long time since I remember at school being taught the difference between simile and metaphor, and which one was which.
Yeah, so when you use like or as to say something is like something, yeah. So the sentence was, beneath him the great city spread like a carpet of lights twinkling in the darkness. It's beautiful. Really lovely simile.
Thank you.
Which adjectives are used to describe the music on page 16?
Knowing me, I'd probably use the word play or bounce, because that's how I always think of music being sort of playful and
bounce is as a verb, I believe. Yeah, notes were bouncing around the stars.
Yes, bouncing and bouncing at louder, swelled, more and more instruments joining in. The most beautiful sound Maximillian had ever heard. It is beautiful. It is beautiful.
Most beautiful. I've also got there. Maximillian heard a single musical note, sweet and clear.
And clear.
I thought that was a lovely description. So,
I think that there's that moment when music starts, when you get that sort of one note cutting the silence, and I just think that's a magical moment. It's one of my favourite parts of going to a concert or something, where either the final note as it peters out or that first note as it comes in. It's just a magic moment, and I wanted that right at the centre of it. Lovely.
We've got Joy coming up again, but she's commenting on my description of her, my adjectives for her. Probably short, how rude. I'm definitely effervescent and stumpy. I tell you,
I'm 5'2". I'm Team Joy.
if you observed Joy for a while, Sarah, you would have ample amounts of content to write a book. I tell you, she's a fascinating character. Simon also says, thank you so much. I had a busy day today, and it has been lovely to hear you talk so passionately about writing and how you personify cat, which it clearly is your favourite cat. Oh, snuck one in there, didn't you? Snuck one in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Cats are brilliant. I love. They're fascinating. I just think they're amazing animals.
Yeah, quite deep, aren't they? You wonder what they're thinking often.
Yes, yeah, and they're always. I think it's that curiosity about them, and also the way that they're. One of my favourite things about cats is the way that they are always slightly offended by something. And I tried to get a lot of that into Max. He's always slightly, because it's so funny. It makes me laugh every time.
Great. Laura says, Joy, I'm scared about how Tim would describe me now. That's next week, Laura. We're describing you on the next episode. And Joy's 4'9". Oh, she's a short teacher, isn't she? Well, I think you're year 6, Joy, aren't you? And lots of year 6s taller than you. I win, Sarah. And then she says, Diok.
Bao Yawn.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
with a little kiss, which is nice. Next question. What are we meant to think about Maximillian from his introduction in the first chapter? How do you want us to see him?
I hope people find him amusing in that he is slightly sort of slightly pernickety about things, and very particular about his tail. He's clearly a cat who's very proud of certain things, and very keen to keep up appearances. But at the same time, he's slightly lost. He's sort of. I hope I made it clear that he's not got life all figured out, and I think that's how a lot of us feel sometimes. We're putting on a very brave face and we're making sure that we look our best, but actually underneath it all, not everything is right. And as I say, not everything becomes right, and until he finds the right home that values him for who he really is, rather than this perfect kind of impression that he feels he has to give to the world. So he's very proud of his tail. His tail actually becomes a bit like Hercule Poirot's moustache. He can't think if it's messy. So every time when he goes on to solve the mysteries, he's got to make sure his tail is perfect.
Fantastic. And the last question, you're doing very well, I must say. How is Maximillian different from Oscar the Black Cat?
Well, I think Oscar is the one who actually has got things figured out. He's confident, but confident in his own skin. He's a very confident in his own fur, as it were. He knows. He knows who he is, and he likes his life. He knows the limitations of his life. He knows the good things about his life, and he's just a confident cat. He's a real gentleman. But at the same time, he spots that Max needs something, and he takes him under his, probably not a wing because he's a cat, but takes him under his paw and looks after him. And he's very, and I think because of that, he's a very kind cat, and that's what they've got in common, because Max and Oscar are both kind and good-hearted creatures, but Max seems to be all sort of perfect and glamorous, but is actually a little bit clumsy. Oscar looks to be a bit scraggy with his kind of one eye and scraggy ears, but he's the one that's got the poise and the elegance and the sort of the self-assuredness. So they're sort of opposites in that way as well. I'm really fond of both of them, though. I love them bits.
Yeah, and opposite characters is really important to have in a book, isn't it? Because they learn from each other.
Yeah,
and wildly different lifestyles, don't they? Which is lovely to see. Thank you, Sarah. You did really well with that. I think you get a solid A. We have a little bit of help over adjectives partway through. So
I did.
Just shy of A+, but you know how to use them, and that's what. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a real pleasure to have you on. And if you do want to win 3 copies of Sarah's books from her ever-growing library, which is very exciting, please do share, please do comment. Maybe you can comment to another teacher who would find these books interesting as well, or you can like this video as a chance to win. And there's 3 books: The Phantom Portrait, The Nap Caper, and The Disappearing Diva, which are all fantastic lovely books. We'll also be releasing this as a resource in its own right on our webpage, litfilmfest.com. So please look out for that. And we've got lots actually to show people online, which is fantastic. Lots of resources on our website on litfilmfest.com, from book reviews about Kenzuki's Kingdom or Holes, all the way to fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. So please do check out litfilmfest.com, where there's plenty of free content. Ooh, that word free, absolutely golden. We've also got a fantastic range coming out all the time called the Quick Fire Write, and this is part of the Quick Fire Fiction. And you can see we've also got Welsh there as well. So if you do want to do something for Eisteddfod, we do have the Welsh language and resources to celebrate the new Welsh curriculum coming out. But there are plenty of resources for you to get stuck in, or if you want to learn about alternative medicine, or are films bad for you, or art therapy. There's absolutely tons of really interesting projects for free online with video content, lots of activities and questions to get you going in your classroom tomorrow if you wanted to, or good for lockdown as well, really good for lockdown learning. If you have bubbles at home, you can give them access to these pieces of content really quickly at home. And that's why we put them together, to support us through this naff time, really. So thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. And we've got 2 last comments. I'll just do. No, it's Joyce saying thank you. Really enjoyed the interview. It was great. And so does Carol as well. She says thank you. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you for all the comments and questions.
Yeah. And take care, everyone. I hope you have a great bonfire night. Happy bonfire night. We avoided the fireworks in the interview tonight, and also hope just hope everyone's lockdown goes okay. I know it's tough in schools at the minute, particularly, and we're all going through it together, and we're all here to help each other if we can. It's a good community, really strong, and all of you are doing a fantastic job, and we really appreciate that for our children's future. So stay safe. We really appreciate everything you do from Lit Film Fest. Thank you very much. Take care, Sarah.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.